Hey everybody, so our food is killing us, and in this video I want to talk about why. So for those of you guys who are new here, I'm Dr. Jake Long and I am a practicing chiropractor. And so in this video I want to talk about where our food went wrong and what's causing so much disease in our society, especially as Americans. So this first chart that I want to show you is a pie chart that shows a breakdown of percentage of calories and what category of food that they're coming from. And this is for a standard American. This is an average of Americans as a whole. So what percentage of calories is coming from what categories? And as we look at this chart, we can see some glaring issues with it. So 63%, this is down here in the yellow part of it, 63% of our calories as Americans are coming from fats, added oils, and processed foods. This is literally the worst category that we could have this big on a chart like this. And so this is a huge glaring issue when it comes to what percentage of calories are coming from what category. And so 12% coming from vegetables and plant food, and then 25% coming from animal food. And so they say a few things on this chart that I'm not necessarily in agreement with, but overall we can see that 63% of our calories coming from processed foods. That is a big red flag and a huge reason why we're seeing so much disease, health issues, digestion issues, and gut issues as a whole. So a huge reason why we might be getting most of our calories from the ultra processed foods is likely due to the fact that it was recommended by the food pyramid. The food pyramid was instituted back in 1992, and I did a full detailed overview of that food pyramid in the last episode, in episode 2. So if you're interested in that, go find that video and click on it. I'll probably link it somewhere on this video right now if you're interested. But that was recommended on the old food pyramid. So they've since updated the food pyramid back in 2011, and so now it's called My Plate. And so this one is definitely a better visual representation of what is recommended to eat for us as Americans. And so this one's customizable as well, so you can change proportions and things like that. But it's at least a visual representation of what you should actually put on your plate and how much of each category. So they've updated it for the better, I would say. So give credit where it's due. So they've got the categories broken down nicely now, but they make no mention of the quality differences that exist in each of these categories. So to take an example, fruits and vegetables, there's no difference apparently between conventional and organic when you're choosing fruits and vegetables. And in my opinion, that's a huge oversight, because whether or not my fruits and vegetables are sprayed with Roundup, glyphosate, these chemicals that can leach into the foods themselves and cause issues in our gut, that's a problem. And so I would definitely choose organic over conventional, but there's no mention of the difference there. And then when we look at something like grains, okay, is there a difference between organic white rice or fried rice from the Chinese place down the road? Is there a quality difference in the nutritional value when foods are prepared that way? And then protein, that's a huge rabbit hole we could go down as well. Grass-fed organic when it comes to beef versus conventional beef, a big old tube of ground beef. Is there a difference in quality between those meats? My answer would be yes, there is a big difference, and that's something that we should talk about. And then dairy, another rabbit hole. You can get conventional, a 2% or whole milk, or you can get organic grass-fed milk. Does what your cow eats matter to the milk that it produces? And is there a difference between dairy-like substances like almond milk and oat milk and things like that? And then there's a whole nother category with raw. So raw milk, if you can have access to it, a local farmer would probably be the best way to access it. But if you have raw milk, it actually contains the probiotics that are naturally occurring in milk to help your gut as well. And it also has lactase enzyme that helps you break down lactose in milk. But when you process it, when you pasteurize milk, it's usually done at a higher heat that actually burns out and kills the probiotics that are in there as well as the lactase enzyme. And then it may need to be added back in after the fact. So there's a huge, ocean of information to swim through when it comes to each of these categories that are listed on MyPlate. And I would suggest that all of you do your research when it comes to not just what category to eat or drink, but how to get the best quality when it comes to those different categories. And it's really important. And they also recommend now, through the USDA, which is where the food pyramid and MyPlate comes from. They also recommend now like a Mediterranean diet as well as vegan and vegetarian. And all of these can be great for some people, but there's not a one size fits all. We're all different when it comes to diet, and so one diet may work for somebody, but it might not work for you. And so one of the most powerful things that you can do when it comes to diet, whether you are vegan, vegetarian, carnivore, animal-based, keto, paleo, there's a million different ones out there. So if you have a diet that you think works for you and that you like, one of the most powerful tools to use is what's called an elimination diet. And so that's where you will start with the most basic foods that you could possibly eat and limit the number of foods that you eat for 2 weeks, maybe a month, depending on your scenario. But you start with just the core basic tenets of your diet that you know doesn't inflame your gut and doesn't give you issues. You start with those few number of foods, and you'd like to pick ones that are the most nutrient dense, that will give you the best sustainability, because you don't want to deprive yourself of nutrients that you need. But you want to eliminate the number of foods so that you can then eat a small number of foods, and then maybe 2 weeks or a month later add in one thing at a time every period of 2 weeks or a month, whatever you want to do. But you just add one thing at a time to give your body a chance to tell you whether or not that thing that you've added in is the culprit when it comes to your gut and your health. A lot of issues can be caused just from foods, like brain fog. There's gut issues that, there's a list of them. There's a ton of things that can happen when you're eating a food that either you're allergic to or it's just causing issues in your gut to begin with. But it's really important if you're not thriving to try an elimination diet so that you can see what foods might be causing you issues specifically. They could be recommended on a diet, but that doesn't mean that it's good for you. So the Mediterranean diet is also one that's highly recommended. And as we look at the Mediterranean diet, it's in a pyramid form as well here. But we can see that they brought in the category of the base here compared to the food pyramid. And so now they've got at least whole grains is mentioned there rather than just grains as a blanket statement, because whole grains actually retain the full wheat plant so that you get most of the nutrients from that. And then they've also got bread, beans, and nuts there at the base. But this is a much healthier version of, what would have been recommended in the 1992 food pyramid. So this is definitely way better than that. But the reason that the Mediterranean diet has sort of rose to prominence and been recommended so widely is because of what's called blue zones. So if you haven't heard of blue zones, these are small pockets of populations that on average typically live longer than 100 years. So they're what's called centurions because they live over a century. And so largely represented in those population groups is the Mediterranean diet. But with something like blue zones, there are more factors, there are more variables than just their diet, but that's a good way to look at it. Okay, what do the people that live the longest eat? And so that's interesting to me as well. And so in a lot of those populations, they are eating something like a Mediterranean diet. that is helping them to sustain their life much longer than us as Americans. Our life expectancy is not the greatest when it comes to industrialized nations. And so maybe we could take something from the Mediterranean diet and help to improve our health overall. So the Mediterranean diet is definitely an interesting one to look at. Okay, so in quick conclusion, from all that we've talked about and all the information that's been gathered as of late, the main takeaways are that we should prioritize whole organic foods that nature provides, and we're in a really good spot if that makes up the vast majority of our diet. And then really just limiting the ultra processed foods. We're going to be in a really good spot if we just do those two things. Don't eat the ultra processed, ultra convenient foods, and eat the foods that are whole organic and that nature provides. And so, you know, there's many things to consider when it comes to diet, and one that we haven't really touched on yet is that there's a whole nother component to this besides just the nutritional value that you can get from foods, that there are certainly higher quality foods and lower quality foods when it comes to nutrient value, but there's also a component for ethical and moral standing when it comes to the foods that you choose. So conventional meat is one of the biggest offenders when it comes to this type of thing. And so if you haven't seen the documentary Food Inc., I would highly recommend you watch that. If you want to learn more about the cruelty that is done to animals when it comes to factory farms and, you know, big agriculture. And so choosing foods that are grass-fed, organic, if it's beef, choosing the higher quality meats is really doing more than just providing better nutrient value to you for what you're eating, but it's also taking a stand ethically against what's happening when it comes to big agriculture. So I typically recommend that people will prioritize the protein that they're getting in their diet. And so when you think about it, you know, mostly the protein that you're going to get is from animals. And so ideally, if you want to be healthy and thriving, you want to eat animals that were healthy and thriving before they were harvested. And so you want those animals to be eating the diet that they're designed to eat and living the type of life that they're designed to live. If they're healthy and thriving, chances are you will be healthy and thriving when you eat them. And so that's just a little bit of a teaser for the next video that I'm going to do, which is what I do. I've gathered all this information and I've made a choice for my health and what I want to eat. And so I'll be talking about that in the next video and what I chose to have the healthiest diet for me to thrive.